I've taken 8,000 prohormone specific questions from this channel, synthesized them down to 27. And today, I'm here to answer all of them. Candidly, honestly, the real truth. I'm not here to blow smoke up your butt. I'm here to actually educate you. This isn't entertainment, even though I'm going to make it entertaining, of course. This is about learning so that you don't mess anything up, because I did. My name's Travis DIllard. I've been involved in this space for close to 17 years. I think we can safely say now, maybe in the anabolics world, but definitely in the pro-hormone world, that I know 99.9% more than anybody out there. And we also can say that we've got a full-blown pro-hormone encyclopedia here. You're not going to find this information anywhere in the world but here. From should I take Enclomiphene during cycle, to will prohormones pop up on a drug test, all the way to do 4 andro creams really work. And at the end, the final verdict of probably the most talked about ingredient within a prohormone, Laxogenin. We're here today to give all the information away. Time to clear the confusion and pack this thing out to the gills full of value like we do every single video. Your questions answered right now. This video is sponsored by Stay Swole Rapid Fire Q&A. The most anabolic value in easily the least amount of time, where you get a little bit of this guy who's overly passionate and tells you exactly what to do because I made all the mistakes and I'll give you the blueprint, and I happen to act a little bit like your aggressive older brother, or you can get a little bit of me. Either way, you're in pretty good hands. All right, let's stop messing around. It's time to, what am I saying? Let's get it. For the first question, Billy asks, can I stack prohormones with my TRT? Yeah, absolutely. Quite frankly, it's preferable than not having TRT at all. Here's what you have to understand. TRT, testosterone, it's going to aromatize into estrogen. And if we take a 4-andro, that's also going to aromatize into estrogen. So we just want to be very mindful here. We need to make sure that we're taking enough arimiplex and be on the lookout for any gyno-related symptoms. Speaking of gyno, question number 2, Cobra asks, so if I have existing gyno, is this going to aggravate it? Perhaps I should have estrogenics on hand just in case. If you do have it already, though, and it's really starting to bother you, I'll look into something like the most powerful AI that we know of, letrozole. 25 milligrams a day is not what I would recommend, but it's what a doctor would recommend, because this is information and educational purposes only and entertainment. I hope you're being a little bit entertained, but I have to warn you, because if you've ever crashed your estrogen levels, which ultimately that's what we're trying to do here, because that's going to minimize the gyno, or at least get rid of some of it. It won't get rid of all of it if enough fatty tissue is already underneath the nipple. But if you've ever done this before, it sucks. Your mood is horrible. No one wants to be around you. You don't even want to be around yourself. As for estrogenics, the original question that you asked, it's got 8-bromo, which is not a farm grade AI. And if you already have gyno, you're going to need a powerful farm grade AI like Arimiplex. Number 3, what in the world asks, will 1 testosterone make me fail a piss test? Now this question is missing quite a few details and we could use some more of that information, but if it's for your job, I wouldn't worry about it. They're not going to pay for it. It's too expensive. If it's for sports, well, we should just ask Mark McGuire how his androstenedione cycle was. It's an andro, and not to mention he was also on steroids and HGH, but that's not the point. Do not take this if you're in organized sports. And if you're in high school and they don't test in your organized sports, don't take it either, because you're going to mess yourself up mentally, I promise. And the 4th is that Sarms are more effective than prohormones. Well, that's not even a question, it's just a statement. But yes, they are, with more side effects too. And the 5th question, Rick asks, I thought Andriol was like TRT, but then you say it's weaker. Can you explain? So I know a lot of us are interested in the new Prohormone Andriol, and we're all excited to figure out what it actually does to the body. But you got to hang on for a second, because me and 120 community members are currently on cycle. We're on our 4th week. And I took bloods week 1, and I will be sharing my bloods week 8, and I will be doing an update video next week. So I'm not going to leave you hanging, though. I know you want something, so I got to give you something. Here's my experience so far. On paper, Andriol is a long-acting, long-esterified 4-andro. So it's going to be a little weaker than a 4-andro, like a Sustanon 250 or Androdiol. But so far, I've had 0 side effects. I didn't have any anxiety like I did with Sus 250. I didn't have any tiredness like I did with 1 testosterone. And we're still determining whether it's sufficient enough to run past 8 weeks. But TRT replacement? I don't think so, my dudes. Not even close. For the 6th question, Traps has asked, can you use Enclomiphene to get your balls going again? The thing is that Enclomiphene's great, and on cycle you can argue that it can restore our balls, or at least not restore them on cycle, because we have an external source in our body preventing us from raising our natural testosterone levels. So it could help in the transition from being on cycle to going off cycle. But I recommend you take it off cycle because it's going to restore your natural testosterone levels, which is going to help you out a lot. And that's really when you need it off cycle. Because the thing is, if you take it on cycle and off cycle, your body's going to get used to it and the efficacy is just going to go down over time. Question number 7. TS Offroad asks, Travis, is that the casket couch behind you? You dirty dog. Ooh. Gotta go.
2 minutes later.
And question number 8, Pelamasa asks, can I take Prohormones on an empty stomach? For sure, a lot of people do this. And some people even argue that it's more quickly absorbed that way. But me personally, nah, I can't do it. I have to have food in my stomach. And number 9, Eric asks, so I just started taking an SSRI for anxiety. Have you heard of any issues taking it alongside 1-testosterone? And just in case you couldn't tell by now, I'm not a doctor and therefore I can't point you in one direction over the other because this is not medical advice. I am not a licensed practitioner, but an SSRI is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And its sole mission is to just increase our serotonin levels, just a slight boost, especially when we're feeling kind of low. It can help us kind of unblur that lens. And for Andro, the prohormone, what we do know about that, it's very important that we talk about 4-andro specifically because it specifically increases our testosterone and estrogen, which is great when we're on cycle. We feel great. Our testosterone goes up, our estrogen, we're taking Arimiplex, so we can handle that. It feels good. But when we're off cycle, this is where our mood starts to turn on us. Because at the end of your cycle and then leading into your post cycle, our cortisol is going to go up. And it doesn't matter how many ancillaries we take. We can take all the Arimiplex, all the ashwagandha, all of it. There's nothing we can do. It's just going to happen. And cortisol is inversely proportional to serotonin. Therefore, it's going to go down post-cycle. So this is where it gets real bro science-y. And again, I am not a doctor. Do not listen to a word I'm saying. But think about this for a second. If our serotonin goes down and we're on SSRIs during cycle, and as it plummets, we can just increase our dosage of SSRI just ever so slightly. But not too much because then our dick won't work. But you do you, my dude. You'll figure it out. And question number 10, Alex asks, am I going to lose my hair? So the only prohormone that this really applies to is epiandro because it converts into DHT, which will have some effect on your hair, but only if it runs in your family. But not only if, and I feel like I'm driving myself crazy here, I sound like a broken record, but if you cycle it on, off, and you do not take a break, and those 8 weeks do not count in between cycles, eventually it can lead to hair thinning, hair loss, even to baldness. But just as many people who suffer from the hair issues without the predisposition in the family because they've been cycling it over and over again. For every person there's one on the other side. In fact, I know somebody who was taking epiandro for 4 straight years, and I swear to you, he got more hair. It just doesn't make any sense. Question number 11, Reginaldo asks, so when I tried Winstrol and Superdrol, I didn't see any results. The only thing I noticed was I was sore. Can anyone tell me what I was doing wrong? So once again, we could use some more context here, and this doesn't really give us enough information to answer this question with certainty. But put bluntly, not responding to Superdrol, my dude, has to be the scientific anomaly of this century. Or, and I'm really speculating here, maybe you took Superdrol hoping to feel it like we all do, and maybe you actually felt it, but you didn't know because you couldn't feel your body to begin with. Oxidative stress, not sleeping, over-exercising, not exercising, any stressor can wreak havoc. And I know nothing about your situation, nothing at all. But what I do know is that based on what you've said, not being able to feel it, if it did in fact work, but you couldn't feel it, well, this is a sign of toxicity in the body. Because I've never heard of anybody taking Superdrol and not experiencing some side effect, and I didn't see any side effect that you listed in that question. So, what's next? And question number 12, I'm Crazy Maniac asks, how long do I have to wait for my cycle to do the Arimiplex, or how does that even work? And thank you for all the videos. You're a very underrated YouTuber and you deserve more subs. And if you too agree with this, or you're just getting value and you want to show your appreciation and you're not subbed, go ahead and hit that sub button. If you are subbed, come on boys, let's hit that like button. Let's get this out there. Prohormones, they're not going to be as powerful as the real gear. So we don't really have to worry necessarily about our esters clearing. Yes, these do have a half-life, and yes, it does take some time in certain cases, especially if it's an undecanate ester like a Andriol. It's going to take some time to clear, and so in theory, you would wait for them to clear before you start taking your PCT like Arimiplex. But because they're not as powerful, I and many others, we've had massive success just taking Arimiplex the day after our last dosing. And question number 13, Manny asks, can I take this while taking creatine? Yes, you can take prohormones while taking creatine. Question number 14. I'm sorry, I couldn't find who asked this, but are you cruising on test? Yeah, I'm currently cruising on TRT. And I have been for 8 years after I had a severe concussion playing flag football. And I really wish I had a better story to tell you than that, but I don't. But the good news for you is that that's how I actually got interested in all this stuff. I tried to figure out testosterone and estrogen and how things affected what prior to getting on TRT. So I understood. And that's really what opened up my passion. That's why I'm talking so fast. And that's why I'm here today talking to you. I love you. Such a goof. So moving right along, question number 15, the real world controversy asks, can you drink alcohol while taking 1 testosterone? So 99% of prohormones have a liposomal delivery system, which in theory bypasses the liver and therefore is a little safer. But guys, come on. Anything we're putting in our bodies, any pill, any food, it all passes through the liver. Therefore, anything we add additionally on top, especially if we're doing 3 to 4 prohormones, yeah, if we then drink alcohol on top of that, we're going to be asking for it. So just drink in moderation. And question number 16, Mark asks, can I stack 4 prohormone products together? So if you've reached a point in your prohormone journey where 4 prohormone products sounds like a good idea, I got to ask, what are you doing, my dude? Because let's be honest, the side effects of even just 1 prohormone product can be ridiculous. Anxiety, tiredness, we've seen it all. Stacking more and more on top of one another, we're going to see more and more side effects. If you get to 4, well, those side effects are going to be so rampant, I would just beg the question, why not just take the real gear at this point? Because it's going to be a lot more friendly. But that's not to say that there aren't other options, because there absolutely are. Rather than focusing on hypertrophy, which is the prohormone side, muscle building, we can focus on hyperplasia, which is cell division, building more muscle cells by taking something like a Pro IGF-1 or an insulin-like growth factor, or just anything in the IGF-1 or growth hormone pathways. So we're talking MK677 or the peptide IGF-1 LR3 or Pro IGF-1, which is a great segue into the next question. Question number 17, Gianmar Comic asks, God, I'm butchering these names, which product raises IGF-1 levels the most? MK677, IGF-1 LR3, or Pro IGF-1? I really like this question. So MK677 or ibutamorin mimics ghrelin, the hormone, which then increases growth hormone, thus increasing IGF-1. But there's a feedback mechanism that limits IGF-1 from reaching its highest potential. There's a ceiling, which is put in place only to prevent your IGF-1 levels from getting too high. It's okay. We can't say it's concrete. That's the answer, though. Pro IGF-1, it also increases IGF-1 as well. But the established mechanism as to how this happens is not understood enough to say this one's concrete. Which is why that if our sole purpose here was to increase IGF-1 levels, well, we would pick the one that binds directly to the IGF-1 receptor and has a long amino chain. IGF-1 LR3. But if you were just looking to just increase growth hormone only, well, then I would stick with MK677. And question number 18, Vlad asks, so would you recommend a 4-week or an 8-week prohormone cycle? 8 weeks, hands down, no questions asked. And the main reason is because a prohormone can take on average about 4 weeks to fully saturate the body. So you're not going to experience the real gains until after week 4. So you can do 4 weeks, but you're going to be cutting your gains by at least more than half. Question number 19, Mark asks, Travis, can you please look into transdermal products as they are thought to be 2 times more effective than the oral version? So transdermal creams, when we compare it to the typical liposomal pill, it gets to bypass the liver. The pill does not. So in theory, the cream would be more effective in that way. And more importantly, your blood level concentrations are going to be a lot more constant. Because when the lotion pump, it sits on the skin, and it moves through your epidermis at a much more constant rate when compared to a pill. So in theory, it would be not only more effective, but it would be more constant and you would feel a whole lot better. But that's theory. Because in my personal opinion, if you came to me right now and said, hey, Travis, my testosterone's low, it's 10 nanograms per deciliter. I hope it's not that low. I would say, yeah, it's probably a good time you look at a TRT. But what I would never say is that cream is the way to go. Because unlike a pill, we know exactly how many milligrams we're getting. With the creams, we have zero clue. They try their best, but there's nothing that will lead to more side effects than taking milligrams different every single day. I mean, you're asking for it there. But this is just my opinion, and let's be honest, prohormones, they might not be powerful enough to even matter that much. But nevertheless, I'm going to go with the science and what I know. You do you, my brother. Oh, and by the way, I am going to cover this in a breakdown video here coming up. Oh, There's lotion everywhere. And question number 20, Mr. Grizzly Tooth asks, these names are hilarious. There's one PCT I haven't heard you talk about yet. Novedex XT. So Novedex, generally speaking, is in a family of products similar to Arimiplex or Arimiplex, which we often only talk about when we're talking about PCT, or if we have estrogenic-related side effects on cycle, you can toss in Arimiplex. But just like Arimiplex, Novedex is also an AI, or aromatase inhibitor. We use it to block estrogen, and it looks a lot like Arimiplex. And it also has a test booster on top of it. So if you were to take a stack, let's just say Superdrol, Decabolin, and Sustanon 250. I mean, don't take that stack. That's a lot. But if you were, something like Novedex isn't going to be enough, because while it does have a test booster and an AI, we're going to need more than that. We're going to need cardiovascular support. We're going to need liver support. We're going to need anxiety support. So instead, just use Arimiplex. But if you're going to take a baby dose or start with a standalone product like a dimethazine or a 1-testosterone, well, Novedex should be just fine. And by the way, if you need a promo code for your next Prohormone purchase and you want to support me, feel free to use the code TravisD for 10% off at TotalNutritionHouston.com. Thanks, guys. Question number 21, Lionheart asks, T-Rav, what's a good starter stack in general that doesn't cause hair loss? So I'm going to give you just a couple examples for this one real quick. If you came to me and you're like, I ain't worried about hair loss. Quite frankly, I don't even know why you keep talking about it. It's never been an issue for me. And you want to cut with it specifically, I would take 1-testosterone and dimethazine. On the other hand, if you came to me and you're like, I've got every predisposition in the book, everybody in my family is bald, I've taken all the steroids in my past, and I want to recomp. We can take a Sus 250 mixed with Decabolin, or a Decadurabolin if this is not just your first cycle. It's just a little more intermediate because it's double the dosage of 19-Nor when compared to Decabolin. And by the way, if you're interested in checking out the best starter prohormones, maybe you are a starter, maybe you're not, maybe you just want to learn more about it, click the video above and it will play right after this one. And by the way, this is just kind of an aside. 1-testosterone, we've seen some issues with it recently. 8 out of 10 people on this channel who take 1-testosterone, including myself, feel one side effect that keeps coming up: lethargy. And to be frank, I literally have no idea what's causing it. I used to believe, and I guess I still kind of believe, that it's the 2-step conversion process and it's the taxing on the body when the second step is completed. But don't all prohormones do that? So why is this one specifically so bad with lethargy? Question number 22, Sam the Rubber Band Man asks, do prohormones such as 1-testosterone cause infertility? So a lot of the prohormones we talk about can lead to some level of suppression, including 1-testosterone. And this happens because the luteinizing hormone signal to the pituitary gland is weakened. The pituitary gland uses the luteinizing hormone signal as a way to speak to your balls. Have you ever heard of the brain to ball connection? The luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, both of which are markers for fertility. So when an exogenous source like a prohormone comes into the body, the connection between your brain and balls through the pituitary gland weakens. Therefore, your balls are like, hey, we need more testosterone. Your brain's like, no, buddy, you got plenty. Stop being so greedy. And by the way, if this conversation sounds interesting to you and you want to learn more about PCT and how this whole thing affects when it enters your body and what it does to your hormones, click the video above. I swear it's the best video you will ever see on this subject matter. So yeah, ultimately, if you take enough prohormones over an extended period of time, it will in fact affect your fertility. So just be careful. Question number 23, Cool Mind asks, what is androgen black lion research? Obviously, we don't have time today to go into the full ingredient list or do any kind of breakdown here, but let's look at the top ingredient. They're called ginsenosides, which sounds a lot like ginseng. It's because it's actually derived from it. And ginsenosides are non-hormonal plant steroids that bind to the androgen receptor, much like a synthetic steroid would. Acts very similarly, thus increasing protein synthesis and muscle gain. And unlike Laxogenin, which I can't wait, in 4 questions, we are going to finally break it down. We have been looking for these answers. I am stoked. But ginsenosides, they do have human studies, not just rats, that end up proving the muscle building, the fat loss, the strength capabilities. TLDR, my dude, what's your name again? Cool Mind? Yeah, this one looks pretty good on the surface. Question number 24, Green Man asks, will my balls shrink on prohormones? So this is going to depend on how many prohormones you're taking and for how long. Suppression is directly correlated with the size of your balls. Just remember that. Nuts versus raisins. The Clash of the Titans. It's too much. Jokes aside, if you take one prohormone, one standalone, so epiandro, straight, so if we're talking about a product that's going to be dimethazine, well, you're probably not going to have to worry too much about shrinkage. No raisins for you. But if you're taking Superdrol and pairing that with more and more on top, or even just Superdrol alone, you probably will experience some level of shrinkage. But guys, I got to break character for a second. What? I don't get it. I really don't. I do not get why balls aesthetically are so important. Is this a vanity thing? Like, what am I missing? What are we even doing with our balls that I'm unaware of? Like, it's not even the tool that matters. Question number 25. Okay, it's not a question, it's a statement, but Scott Kenyon says, I would encourage any users to run a test base on any anabolic. I'm going to make an assumption here, Scott, that you brought this up because you want to avoid the testosterone roller coaster, the up and down and up and down. You get on cycle, it goes up. You get off cycle, it goes down. And we want to avoid this. So you're definitely not wrong here. In fact, I'm on TRT and it's hugely advantageous because when you get off cycle, you have a ceiling, right? These are my and anybody on TRT's constant testosterone levels. Everybody's might be a little bit different. Some might be lower, some might be higher, but you get the point. When I take a prohormone, it can't go below this because I'm on TRT. But if you're not on TRT, then your exogenous prohormone is no longer in the body. So your endogenous is still shut off. So it's just going to tank all the way down to the floor. And this is going to come with a series of side effects and it's not going to be fun. Anxiety, your serotonin is going to be depleted. There's just a whole assortment of it. And it's kind of part of the game if you're not on TRT. But here's the thing, we're talking about prohormones here. It's not going to have the same effects as steroids. For instance, I took Sustanon 250 and I measured my markers. LH, luteinizing hormone, which we just talked about, so it should sound very familiar, and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. Here was week 1, and here's week 8. And what you'll quickly notice is that it didn't go down very much. So I did have some level of suppression. And you're going to say, oh, you're on TRT, so how do you even know that? No, I was on TRT before and after, and I still am. It's a control. Okay, well, what if I wasn't on TRT? Would that affect anything? My LH and FSH? Probably not. I would still have the same level of suppression, right? So we just got to be careful when we just make blanket statements like that, because if we're not going to be suppressed that much, why the heck on this planet would we get on TRT and suppress ourselves completely? But obviously, again, TRT is still good. So Scott, you're not wrong, but we just got to look at it from every angle. Question 26, one away from Laxogenin, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. Brimming hat ass. Can you take one test and Sustanon 250 together so you have a test base? I happen to know exactly where this question is stemming from. It's actually coming from the very first video I did on prohormones, one testosterone. And given my level of understanding at that time, which was decent, more than most, I wasn't taking a lot of information, and one of those pieces being from Reddit, which is basically like a bro vacuum, and they think that they're always right about everything over there. Here's what they did. They're basically saying that because steroids are like this, prohormones are like this. And that's not the case because, quite frankly, they're just not as powerful in both the benefits or the side effects. So we can't just apply the same thing. I've taken almost all of these by themselves. Some of them had side effects, but it wasn't because I didn't have a test base. That's not really a thing. That said, one testosterone and Sustanon 250, to answer your question, one testosterone is dry and Sustanon 250 is wet. So we don't often see it on paper together because it's kind of a recomp and people either like the bulk or cut with it. But if you've tried them both on their own, because you're smart at doing this and you've tried everything prior to combining things, well, if it made you feel good, there's no reason why you can't give this a shot. Question number 27. Yes, we have finally made it. We finally get to talk about Laxogenin. I've been so excited about this one. Salad asks, any comments on Laxogenin? Does it work? Laxogenin. Just found out a couple things about it, so I've been really excited to share it with you. Laxogenin is a non-hormonal plant steroid, which is said to increase protein synthesis by activating the mTOR pathway. The mTOR pathway being the area in the body that produces proteins. In 2009, rat studies. But unfortunately, they left out testosterone as a metric. It did increase muscle, but we don't exactly know how or why because the testosterone wasn't included. 2015, humans. Yes, human studies. Except they also left out testosterone, but they did find that protein production and protein synthesis did in fact go up. But ultimately the science is obviously pretty limited because testosterone is not included and we need to know that number. That said, I did poll the community and we did see that some people really do enjoy it. And others have tested it feeling underwhelmed and quite frankly disappointed. So overall, and I couldn't have said this any better, it's a nice polisher. since we just got done talking about IGF-1, and that happens to be my favorite pathway, the growth hormone IGF-1 pathway, I think you're really going to enjoy Pro IGF-1, which I believe is the best video on the channel in terms of content. It's my favorite anyway, and I think it'll be yours too. Until next week, stay safe and stay swole, my brothers.